Hello, everyone. Welcome to or back to the Higher Mind podcast. I'm your host, Jocelynn Carver. I'm 21 from northern Minnesota, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you today. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing mindsets and everything having to do with that, including factors that play a part in our own mindsets and also how mindset affects us and our perception of reality. We're also going to talk about a super interesting study that was conducted in 1979 on a group of older men, and that is something that just blew my mind, so I can't wait to get into that with you. And also neuroplasticity, which is our brain's way of creating new neural pathways. And all throughout our lives, our brains mesh and change, and we're able to actively control that change and create these new neural pathways that will, of course, affect our lives. But before we get into any of that, I just want to talk about why episode 1 of The Higher Mind was deleted in case none of you were there to watch it.
The Higher Mind.
Disclaimer, I'm not a licensed mental health practitioner or a doctor. Everything in the following video/audio file is information from credible articles, books, or teachings that I've gathered through my therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, or group therapies that I found helpful to utilize in my life.
Episode 1, titled Introducing Myself, was posted on November 1st, 2023, and to my members on October 31st, 2023. The entire point of that episode was to give everybody an idea of what was to come on this podcast and what this podcast is truly about. It was also meant to talk about my past and my traumas and to give you an idea of why I'm so passionate about mental health and about personal growth and our spiritual journeys. I laid out the intention that my whole purpose of that episode was not to hurt, but it was supposed to help heal and hopefully help other people who have felt alone, as I have in the past, not feel so alone, and to understand that there are people who understand you and that you can get better, even if you've been through some awful things. And after I had uploaded that video, I hadn't received much criticism, especially not from the family that I had spoken about. But I had received monumental amounts of support from my friends and from strangers and from people who had been able to understand that they can speak on these things and that they can get better. And that was the only thing that I was hoping to gain from that episode. And unfortunately, about 5 or 6 days after it was uploaded, yesterday, I had given someone in my family a call just to talk to them and catch up. And in that conversation, I realized many things. I was told that that episode had absolutely destroyed my family and that they were all very shocked and very hurt by what I had talked about and had shared it so publicly. And I could understand where they were coming from partially, absolutely. I could understand the shock that they would feel. Of course, for me, my shock value has been deeply suppressed, as I have talked about this openly many times, and I have thought about this over and over, and it's something that I think I somewhat desensitized myself to, but I didn't take into account that my family and the family members of the family that I had spoken about on the episode didn't feel the same way, that they hadn't been desensitized to it. And with that being said, I was made aware of the fact that I kind of just went on and I recognized that I am not the best speaker and that I am not perfect, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I'm bound to make mistakes. During the conversations that I'd had yesterday as well, I had noticed that there was a huge amount of misunderstanding. A lot of my family members had taken what I was saying as revenge or as though I was angry or spiteful, and that was absolutely not the case. When I had recorded that video, I was very level-headed, I was feeling really good and very positive, but I can see how it wouldn't be perceived that way because I did talk a lot about the negatives, but not a ton on the positives of the situation. With that being said, I also recognize that there was a lot of projection going on, and now I can absolutely understand that as being an issue. The one thing that was most difficult for me personally was that I had had very long conversations with 2 women that I have looked up to forever, and I had never experienced backlash from them in such a strong and powerful emotional way. And during these conversations, a lot of very hurtful, negative things were said towards me and the podcast, which is something that I care so deeply about and I have put so much effort into. And in the heat of all of this, I feel as though I lost a big part of myself, and I lost a big part of what I felt my purpose was, which is to share my story, something I've always wanted to do, and to hopefully help others feel as though they weren't alone. So while this shock and this confusion and this hurt and this pain was at its magnitude, I had decided to remove the episode from all platforms. And in all honesty, after I had done that, I was ready to throw in the towel with this podcast completely and let it go and let my dream fade. And I felt my spirit was completely crushed and my purpose in life was just demolished and I felt purposeless and I didn't know where to go from there. So after this excruciatingly painful conversation that I had had with this person who I'd always looked up to, I was a mess. I was a wreck. I was feeling horribly about myself, and I decided that it was me and it was my fault and I was the problem. So I wound up calling every person that could have been hurt or affected by that episode, and I apologized to each of them individually, letting them know that my intent was never, ever, ever to hurt. It was only to heal. And I apologized to many of the people who were spoken about in that episode who had hurt me and had traumatized me. But once I was able to sit with those feelings, I let myself feel angry. I sulked. I laid in bed for hours. I got up and I recognized that it wasn't okay for them to do that either. But I don't think that they had the right to talk so terribly and so down on me for sharing my story. And at the time, it felt a little bit backwards, in all honesty. It felt as though I had hurt people by sharing my hurt, and I didn't understand why all these people were defending the people that had hurt me so badly and so angry at me. But looking back now, I understand that we're all human. This is our first times being alive, and we're all learning and growing, and we're all hurt. We're all hurt individuals. And unfortunately, my family is plagued with generational trauma where we don't speak about these things, especially not publicly. And as much as that explains it, it still doesn't excuse it. And it still hurt very badly. And I almost lost what I thought was my purpose. But here I am. And this experience has just shown me how strong my mindset is and how resilient I've become and how strong I've become. I was able to take these negative things that people had said to me and reframe them in a positive manner and use that as growth and potential for this growth and for this podcast. So with that being said, I just want to say that had this whole big mess occurred 2 years ago, I would have had a very, very different reaction than how I've handled it yesterday and today. I was able to use Wise Mind, which is a DBT skill that I learned a couple years back that I use every single day. I was also able to use Radical Acceptance, which is another DBT skill, and I will be talking more in depth about these skills later on in the video. I've decided to use those feelings and put them towards something positive, which is this podcast. And I know that I am still able to grow and that you are still able to grow. And that I've done my due diligence in apologizing for any hurt that I have caused, even though it was highly unintentional. But here I am eager and ready and willing to be back here, and I am super excited to talk about mindset. And I think that this experience really proved to me how important mindset really, really is. And if anyone ever wants to hear about my story in the future, I would absolutely be willing to retell it in order to not only heal others, hopefully, but to heal myself, because it felt good to get it out and it felt right. So with all of that being said, let's get into what is mindset? So on my screen, I'm going to share with you all an article that I absolutely love, and it's from verywellmind.com. And so it says, what is a mindset? Your mindset is a set of beliefs that shape how you make sense of the world and of yourself. It influences how you think, feel, and behave in any given situation. It means that what you believe about yourself impacts your success or your failure. According to a Stanford psychologist, Carol Dweck, your beliefs play a pivotal role in what you want and whether or not you achieve it. Mindsets can influence how people behave in a wide range of situations in life. For example, as people encounter different situations, their mind triggers a specific mindset that then directly impacts their behavior in that situation. So mindset is something that is very important to me and something that I feel creates a massive difference in my life. And in my opinion, mindset is just a form of perception. It is the way that you perceive reality. And that in and of itself is massive and huge, and it can seriously contribute to your life in either very positive or very negative ways. So there are two very broad mindsets, and that is either fixed mindsets or growth mindsets. And I'm going to pull up from that same article on theverywellmind.com the difference between those two things. So according to Dweck, the lady who we just talked about, there are two basic mindsets, fixed and growth. And if you have a fixed mindset, you believe that your abilities are fixed traits and therefore you cannot change them. You may also believe that your talent and intelligence alone lead to success and effort is not required. On the flip side, if you have a growth mindset, you believe that your talents and abilities can be developed over time through effort and persistence. People with this mindset don't necessarily believe that everyone can become Einstein or Mozart just because they try. They do, however, believe that everyone can get smarter or more talented if you work at it. So there's a very distinct difference between growth and fixed mindsets, and I think that they explained it pretty well, but I just want to delve a little bit deeper on that. When I was younger, I had a very, very fixed mindset. I believed that I was who I was, I couldn't change it, I couldn't get better, I was depressed, I was going to be alone forever, and that was it. I believed that my intelligence was fixed and that I couldn't raise that intelligence or even dwindle that intelligence if I pushed to try and do that as well. So I believed that I had a specific way to go about life in terms of who I was, and I didn't allow myself to understand if I put my mind to something that I can achieve it. And I know we've all heard that statement so many times before, and it might sound a little cliche, but it's true. And now at this point in my life, when I've done research and I've read books and I've thought and I've meditated on all of these things, I have recognized that I am not stuck and that I am not the person that I was even yesterday, and that every single day we grow and we're able to become more intelligent and more in tune with our bodies and our souls and ourselves if we put our minds to that. And that is why it is so important to pay attention to your mindset and to pay attention to the beliefs that you hold for yourself or for others, because each of those beliefs play a huge role in your perception of yourself and the world around you. This article also gives some really good examples of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, so I'm going to go through a couple of those with you. So in a fixed mindset, one might think, either I'm good at it or I'm not. But if you change your mind and you flip it over to the positive, which is the growth mindset, you can say, I can learn to do anything that I want, which you can. Another fixed mindset is, that's just who I am. I can't change it. And with a growth mindset, you can say, I am a constantly evolving work in progress. And I love that because it's so true. Our opinions and our beliefs can change day to day. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that as long as you are growing and heightening yourself and your consciousness and trying to do better. And so I know I've explained it a little bit, but you might be wondering why is mindset so important and why do people talk about it? Well, I'm going to pull up another article from psychologytoday.com, and this says that mindsets aren't just any beliefs. They are beliefs that orient our reactions and tendencies. They serve a number of cognitive functions. They let us frame situations. They direct our attention to the most important cues so that we're not overwhelmed with information. They prime us with reasonable courses of action so that we don't have to puzzle out what to do. When our mindsets become habitual, they define who we are and who we can become. And that has a lot to do with neural pathways and neuroplasticity and how we are able to get rid of some of those pathways that we have connected. And mindset plays such a vital role in every single part of our lives. If we constantly have the tendency to talk badly or negatively about ourselves or think negatively of ourselves, of course, eventually we're going to believe that because our brains are going to connect those neural pathways and think, okay, so as soon as something bad happens, you're a bad person, you've done bad, you are wrong. And once you start paying attention to your thoughts and your thought patterns and your behaviors, everything will start to become a lot more clear. For example, my entire life, I've struggled with negative thoughts towards myself, and I've been very, very harsh to me and hard on myself, and I can promise you that it doesn't help you and it doesn't push you to get stronger. But if you change that mindset and decided that, no, I am human and I am imperfect, but that makes me perfect, and I'm able to grow and I'm able to communicate, and I am grateful for all of life, that's when you start to notice real changes. Because in the end, we are all our own worst critics, and we are all at the same time our own biggest supporters, and that's important. If you took away everybody else in your life, and it was just you, and you took away all of your personal belongings and everything that you think is a part of you, you have to sit with yourself and think, who would I truly be? And with that thought in mind, you have to ask yourself, can I support myself? Do I support myself? Am I my biggest supporter? Do I believe in myself? These are all very, very important questions to ask yourself. And if the answer to any of those are no, I promise that you can work to change that. But to stay on topic, we are going to talk about how there are so many different types of mindsets. And this list is so vast and so broad, and I don't think that you could ever truly number that list or write down all of the different types of mindsets. I'm going to pull up this chart that I have made, and this is just a few different mindsets. So say that you have an argumentative mindset, which is under the fixed category. Someone else could also have an argumentative mindset, but both of you with that same mindset are going to have totally different belief systems and totally different ways that you see the world and the way that you perceive yourself. So this isn't a perfect list, but it does give you an idea of just how many different ways that there are that you can see and view the world and yourself. And if you can't see this and you are listening on Spotify, I can go through it just a little bit. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown, but growth mindsets versus fixed mindsets. And there are also mindsets that are kind of in the between stages that you can either grow into or grow out of. And the ones that you are growing into, you can further grow into those growth mindsets. But the ones that you're trying to grow out of, if you stick with those, you will have a fixed mindset and it will be very, very difficult to pull yourself out of those, but you can do it. And you can push yourself into the grow into category and then eventually into the growth mindset category. So for example, under growth category, we have abundance. This is a mindset where you feel you have an abundance in your life, that you feel grateful for everything that you have, and that you see life as being massively fulfilling, even if you have nothing. There's also the inventive mindset, which is the thought process of being able to create things, and your mind is constantly working to progress and to fix things and to invent new things and new technology, anything like that. Then we have the grow into category, which is, for example, a brave mindset. Now, that is something that can be partially harmful, so it's not a complete growth mindset, but it is more beneficial than anything else because you feel courageous and you are ready to take on the world and you are ready to get things done. Switching over to the fixed mindset category, we have the argumentative, which is one that we've already used. And so you can see the world as wrong and you like to argue things and you feel as though certain things haven't been explained properly and that you could explain it better, or that if someone tries to tell you something, you're going to argue that and say, no, I don't see it that way. You can also argue having an argumentative mindset, which is hard, but you can get out of that if you recognize that you do have it. And then over to the grow out of category that I've put together, we can say that we have a cautious mindset. And a cautious mindset isn't necessarily all bad, but it is more negative than it is positive, because maybe you are afraid of reaching your potential, or you are too cautious in the sense of not moving and working towards your goals and towards your purpose and what you decide you want to do with your life. So mindset is very broad and it is very, very important, and I hope that you are able to understand it a little bit better now. Unfortunately, you won't be able to understand just how powerful your mindset is until you begin to be aware of it and begin to incorporate that into your life, it being your thoughts and your actions and your beliefs, everything. But the next thing that I would love to get into is areas in which mindset affects our lives. So this is where we get into the deep stuff, into why it is so important to be mindful of your mindset. So I'm going to pull up yet another picture that I have created, and this is just something that makes sense to me, and I'm hoping that others can make sense of it as well. And if you are not watching right now, I'm going to explain it as well. So different areas in mindset that can affect our lives can be put into two categories. It can be put into physiological, and then it can be put into psychological. And under physiological, I just kept it very broad and I said physical health. So our physical health is massively affected by our mindset, and we can get into that more when we talk about Ellen Langer's experiment. But on the flip side, we have psychology, and this is our behavior, which obviously massively affects our mindset and the way that we respond to our mistakes and our setbacks. That is another huge one that can really affect our lives if we keep a negative mindset towards these mistakes that we make. And then also relationships. If we have a negative mindset towards relationships, that can deeply affect us. Same with learning. If we have a negative mindset where we hold ourselves to a set intelligence level where we can no longer learn and grow that is inhibiting you from reaching your full potential and growing. But this photo is a Venn diagram of physiology and psychology, and there are two things that go hand in hand with both of those, and our mindset towards our performance is another one that massively impacts the way that we live our lives, as well as our mindset towards motivation. So for example, if we were to sit here and tell ourselves over and over and over again that we don't have motivation, that we can't do these things, that my performance has never been good, so therefore it can never be good in the future, that is a mindset that is going to stick. And that is a mindset that is going to in turn affect our perception, which is going to in turn affect our lives and our mental health, which in turn is going to affect our consciousness or our inner beings. So to give a little bit better of an explanation, I am just trying to say that our mindset truly does make a massive difference in every single aspect of our life, whether that be perception, mental health, or our inner consciousness. So with all of this being said, this is not woo-woo stuff. This is true, and this is scientifically backed. You might be wondering how powerful our mind really can be if we're able to change our lives so dramatically. I will let you know. In 1979, there was a woman who was named Dr. Ellen Langer, and Dr. Langer decided that she wanted to do at the time, radical experiment on the effects of mindset on our physical health and our mental well-being. And I'm going to pull up this article from theworldcounts.com, and you can also find this on the New York Times. You can look this up, it's everywhere, but this is the article that I chose to show all of you. So I'm going to read from the very beginning, which is how powerful is the mind, because I feel this is so important. How we perceive ourselves and the world around us can have a real impact on the physical body. It is not just our perception that changes. Measurable, objective characteristics of our mind and body can change significantly within a short time frame if we persuade ourselves that we are actually younger than our physical age. So mindset isn't just affecting our minds, it's affecting our body. In other words, our mindset can actually change reality. Even something like the effects of passing of time that many considers inescapable is something that you can personally influence. And when I was first reading this, I felt very, very skeptical, and I can understand why other people would feel very skeptical. But I'm going to continue forward, and hopefully you can hear this. So it goes on to the next paragraph, which is reversing the aging process. So if you have doubts about the power of your mind, like I did, have a look at this experiment from 1979. This is Dr. Ellen Langer's experiment. In the experiment designed to test the power of perception, a group of 75-year-old men spend a week in a setting where everything, pictures, newspapers, books, photos, magazines, etc., was from the 1950s, so 19 years before this experiment was being conducted. The researcher explained to the men that they were to talk, act, and behave as if they were actually living back in 1959, a time when they were in their mid-50s. In short, everything was arranged to make it seem as if the world that they were living in was the world that they were at 55. They were given ID badges with old pictures of themselves and were told to have conversations about things that had happened at the time, about their old jobs, etc. The point of the experiment was to show that our mental construction, the way that we perceive ourselves, has a direct impact on the physical body, truly. Of course, the conscious minds of the men were fully aware that they were still in the year 1979 and that no time traveling or any other supernatural things were at play. This was all just an experiment. So even so, the subconscious perception made all of the difference. I'm going to jump now to what the results of this experiment were. And like I said, these 75-year-old men lived like this for a week together, pretending that they were back in 1959 rather than 1979. So before this experiment was conducted, the men were tested on characteristics that normally go downhill as people get older, such as physical strength, eyesight, and short-term memory. When the men were tested after the experiment, most of them had improved in every single category. For example, they were stronger, more flexible, and their eyesight and short-term memory had improved. I am now going to pull up another article, and this one is from modernhealthmonk.com, and this one has some more percentages and some more statistics available. And so this one says that after this experiment, they were more flexible, they had better posture, and improved hand strength. Their eyesight had improved by an average of 10% as well as their memory, and over 50% went up in intelligence. And this article says that here's the best part. They had taken pictures before and after the experiment, and they had showed these pictures to strangers, and this is what they had noticed. Random people were asked to observe the age of these men, and the men looked, on average, 3 years younger than they had when they had originally arrived. And all of the people who had looked at these photos had said that the newer image was the younger image, and the younger version of these men. So now we understand that our thoughts and our actions truly do dictate our reality, and they can change our perception, and they can change us physically. One thing that I've heard often is that you are what you think about, or you become what you think about, or that your thoughts can become your reality, and I absolutely believe this to be true. For example, if we were to sit here and to think very negatively about ourselves over and over and over and create new neural pathways that connected all of these things to different parts of our brains, we would believe them and we would embody that. So say there are two people who are getting ready for the exact same interview, and one of them has a very fixed and negative mindset and negative outlook on themselves and their life, and they consistently told themselves over and over, I can't do this, I'm going to suck, I don't know what I'm going to say, this interview is going to go horribly. The interview will probably go horribly because you are telling yourself these things, and that is going to affect your ability to communicate with these people and to show who you truly are. On the flip side, say there is another person who is going into an interview, and this person has a very positive growth mindset, and they are telling themselves, even if I don't get this job, I still did everything I could, and I wanted this job, and I'm excited for it, and I'm looking forward to getting there. Chances are their interview is going to go far better than the person who has a negative outlook on it, and they are most likely to get the job. And denying this fact to ourselves is only denying our power and pushing us further from reaching our goals and our true potential. And I'm not going to get into the super deep woo-woo hippie stuff with this, but I am going to pull up this article from Psychology Today, and this really helps me to understand how our thought process really does create our reality. So in this article, it says that what I explain to my patients is that there are 3 buckets in life. There are the things that we control, the things that we influence, and the things at which we have no control over. What isn't under our control are random events of life, such as earthquakes or pandemics, illness, job layoffs, deaths of loved ones. These are circumstances that we experience and events that we are aware of, but we have no control over these. But we do influence other living things with our actions. So say you were to walk into a room, and this is a very broad example, but it does make sense, and you see a stranger sitting there. You decide to slap that person in the face. That person will surely respond differently than if you had just smiled at them. And that person could decide to run away, turn the other cheek, slap you back, whatever. So that is just an example of how we truly do influence other people's actions if we pay attention to them. But what we control and where we really start to create our reality is in how we perceive or interpret or think about the events in our life that generate our feelings about those events, and how we subsequently respond with our behavior. No one can choose your thoughts or your actions. Those are yours alone. And this website gives a very good example of using this. So say your significant other were to break up with you and your thought is, I will never find anyone else to love me ever again. You will likely experience some very negative emotions like depression, and you're likely to engage in behaviors consistent with these feelings, such as staying in bed. If, on the other hand, your thought is, I am glad that this loser is out of my life, you are likely to feel and act quite differently, and you get to choose which thought that you want to think, and you get to choose your behavior afterwards. But this is where the creating part gets very serious. This article states that your thoughts, if you think them over and over and over and assign truth to them, they become beliefs. And beliefs create a cognitive lens through which you interpret the events of your world, and this lens serves as a selective filter to which you sift through the environment for evidence that matches up with what you believe to be true. And this is one of my favorite examples, and it is on this same article. For example, if the belief you form when your partner breaks up with you is, I am not attractive enough, and then you go to a party where 10 people tell you that you look great, and then one person says that your outfit is interesting, you are likely to go home and fixate on that interesting comment because you had that negative mindset. And that one person is just adding to that negative cognition, and you're going to believe that one thing. You might think other thoughts consistent with your belief, such as, why do I always pick the wrong thing to wear? I have no style. Other people dress so much better than me. I must look like such a loser. The other 10 people who said that you look great might as well have not existed, and might as well have never even said that. You only took in the evidence from the environment that was consistent with your belief, which is your thought process, which then reinforced your original belief that you are not attractive enough. Our brain has a very powerful selective filtering system, and this is often referred to as priming. And when the brain is primed by a certain belief to look for something, it shuts down completing other new neural networks so that you actually have a harder time seeing evidence on the contrary of your pre-existing belief. What you end up taking from your environment and from the things around you, those thoughts that you have about these things become your belief system. And these beliefs, in turn, actually become your self-concept. So in the present, you may feel I am. These are your I am statements. So if you tell yourself consistently that I am wonderful and that I am human and that I am allowed to make mistakes, you have a growth mindset. You have potential for growth there. And as for the past, these are I was statements. So you could say, I was such a POS. Maybe you were, but you can grow from that and you don't have to view yourself so negatively. As for the future, these are I can or I will be statements. So if you tell yourself over and over, I will be such a failure, I cannot do what I want to do with my life, chances are you're not going to be able to, because you have already created these neural pathways in your brain that influence you to truly believe that. That is your belief system and that is your self-concept. So one thing that we will be talking about in future episodes is mindfulness. And this is something that is very, very important and something that has truly shaped who I am now. And it is the act of being aware of everything that is going on around you and being mindful of what you have now, who you are now, and what you have around you and who you have around you. One part of mindfulness practice that has helped me beyond words, especially in achieving a positive mindset, is being mindful of my thoughts and being mindful of what I say to myself and what I think about other people, and being mindful of the belief systems that others have set for me or that I have set for myself. If you aren't able to be aware of your thoughts and your own belief system, you're not going to be able to change those things, because how would you know that they were wrong in the first place? And you might be wondering how we can do that, how our brain is capable of doing that. And that is where we get into neuroplasticity, which is something that I have mentioned previously in talking about neural pathways. So I first want to bring up an article, again, that I absolutely love. And this is from eckhartyoga.com. And this is just defining neuroplasticity. This states that you have the power to change your mind far more than you may realize. The scientific community believed for a long time that our minds were fixed and unable to change once we matured into adulthood. However, there is new evidence to show that you can indeed teach an old dog new tricks. We can literally change the state of our brains. This ability to alter the structure and function of the brain is known as neuroplasticity. Neuro meaning brain, and plasticity referring to the brain's malleable and changeable plastic-like nature. Neuroplasticity is, much like our brains, a constantly growing and developing area of research, with fascinating insights about the possibility and power of our minds emerging all of the time. And to be able to fully understand how our brain works and why it works the way that it does, we have to understand 4 different components of our brain. First, we have to understand what neurons are. And neurons are nerve cells that are in our brain that transmit information, and they communicate via electrical and chemical signals. And we have a lot of these. We have a lot of them. We have actually 86 billion neurons in one human brain. We also need to understand what synapses are, and these are small gaps that are actually in between the neurons that we had just discussed. And these things are what allows information to pass between neurons, and this also promotes the transmission of messages throughout the brain. So these synapses can transmit information from one neuron to the next, to the next, to the next, all the way to different parts of our brain. And then we also need to understand what neurogenesis is. And this is when new neurons are created. This is the process of new neurons. And this begins very, very early in life. I believe it's about week 3 of human development. And it was actually believed until very recently that neurogenesis was actually not possible in adults, that we weren't able to create new neurons. But now with new studies come out, we've actually revealed that we are able to absolutely create new neurons throughout our life cycle. Even when we're 75, neurons are still being created daily. And the last point that I would like to discuss regarding our brains are pathways. And these are distinct areas of the brain and I like to think of neural pathways as long synapses. They connect different parts of our brain and our nervous system all together into one, and they are all linked to specific behaviors. So for example, when we brush our teeth in the morning, sometimes we'll completely forget that we actually just brushed our teeth because we have repeated this behavior so many times. We have strengthened that pathway so much to the point of, long story short, if we are able to habitually brush our teeth without thinking about it and without remembering it even, that is a very strong neural pathway, and it's something that our brain just does. And we're able to influence different behaviors and different parts of ourselves into those neural pathways, and we're able to actually weaken certain neural pathways that we have strengthened over time, such as negative thought processes or negative cognitions, and we are able to strengthen others if we work at it. So say you were to hold yourself to waking up every single morning, and as soon as you woke up, you were to stretch for 10 minutes. And eventually a neural pathway will sneak its head in, and it will strengthen over time as long as you are consistent in doing these things. So if there is something that you feel you want to have become a part of your routine, you can do that. And you can have it become natural, and it can feel habitual. And same with our thought processes. If our thought processes are predominantly negative, those neural pathways are very, very strong, but it is possible to break those down and weaken those as long as you are using positive self-talk and positive affirmations. And over time, your brain will create those neural pathways and strengthen over time, and you will believe those things. Those will become a part of you. And this is where I want to get into the importance of self-talk. So I'm going to pull up another image that I have created that includes 8 different external factors that influence our mindset. And of course, these are all very broad, but they give you a very big understanding of why it is so important to speak positively to yourself. So of these 8 things, we have personality traits. This is an external factor that is going to influence our mindset. And a lot of times we tend to think that our personality traits are inherent and that they are fixed, but they're not. We can absolutely change those things. The next one is surroundings. So the things that we surround ourselves with, the music that we listen to, the books that we read, those all influence our mindset. So if we were to only watch negative news and read sad books, our brain is going to feel that, and it is going to be very affected by that, and our mindset is going to change. The next thing is media. And this is something that might be a little bit controversial to some people. This could also be put into our surroundings, but I believe that media has a massive, massive influence over our mindset, and the things that we are exposed to on the media and the things that we read and follow, they all play a big part in the way that we see ourselves. So for example, if you were to go on Instagram and only follow bikini models and compare yourself to these people, that is going to influence your mindset, and it's going to lead to insecurity and a negative self-image, which is what all of these things can lead to if you take them the wrong way. The next one is our views or opinions on ourselves. That is a big one. Obviously, the way that we speak to ourselves is going to influence our mindset, and that is kind of the point of this entire picture as a whole. And next, we have jealousy or perceived competition. So this could also be linked with media, but I'm not going to put that one in the same category, because say you are out with your significant other and your significant other is looking at another person, you may immediately think, oh my goodness, they are no longer attracted to me, they are attracted to that person. Now I feel insecure and I perceive that person as competition. That is going to influence our mindset and make us feel less than or insecure. We also have arguments, and arguments massively affect our mindset. For example, if we are belittled constantly and told that we are less than or that we are nothing, that's going to influence our mindset, and eventually we're going to start to believe those things. And this kind of goes hand in hand with family. These are external factors that can also influence our mindset. So if these people are arguing with us, or if they are perceived competition, that is going to influence us and make us feel badly, make us think negatively. And lastly, we have interruptions. So this might be a divorce, or this could be the loss of a job. All of these things are going to influence our mindset based on the way that we think of them and the way that we take them in and handle and process that information. So with all of these 8 categories, we have the option and the ability to decide how we want to react to it. And oftentimes we have a previous belief system built up that we have learned through either childhood or through a negative relationship, where we decide that we are going to perceive these things in a negative way automatically. But we can flip that, and we can look at all of these things, and we can change our mind, and we can recognize that we can take good and positivity from all of these things rather than negativity and negatively impact our mindset. So moving on, if you need to take a break to process all of this information, I know it's a lot, feel free to do so. You can pause the video, take a break, take a breath, drink some water, and ground yourself. Recognize that you don't have to achieve all of this in one day, and you're not going to be able to achieve all of this in one day, no matter how hard you push yourself. But previously in this episode, I have mentioned numerous times turning your mind, and that is something that I had learned in a DBT class that I had taken. And if you aren't sure what DBT is, that's okay. I'm going to pull up this article from dialecticalbehavioraltherapy.com. So DBT focuses on teaching people strategies to help them live their best and most productive life. It is often used to help people with depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorders, addictions, eating disorders, and PTSD, but anyone can use these skills and anyone can benefit from them. And according to dbt.com, there are 4 core skill sets that you have to master to help you problem solve and deal with issues that you have currently in your life. And these things are mindfulness, distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and interpersonal skills. This is also called interpersonal effectiveness, and that is the way that I had learned it. And each of these categories have a different set of skills within each one to help you cope with different things throughout life, whether that be something distressing that you're going through or negative emotions that you're experiencing. And I want to speak on 4, technically 5, DBT skills that have helped me to grow tremendously. So the first one being radical acceptance. Radical acceptance and turning the mind kind of go hand in hand, and that's why I said 4 to 5. But radical acceptance is a mindfulness skill that helps you to accept what is not under your control, and it helps you to embrace what is happening to you currently in a very non-judgmental and open way. So I'm going to give you a very broad example, but hopefully this helps you to understand what radical acceptance is wholly. Say your boss were to fire you with no warning, and there was no reason given to you for being fired. At first, you might feel very angry, very, very angry, and you might feel as though you were wronged or that you were hurt. And these are all very valid emotions. But what radical acceptance does is it allows you to focus on the fact that it happened, and I can't change the fact that it happened. And you can also allow yourself to look back at that and think, is that really a place that I would have wanted to work? Right? So radical acceptance isn't necessarily forgetting and completely forgiving as soon as it has happened. It is more so just understanding that there's nothing that you could have done to change it, that it happened, it was out of your control, and that you can only move forward now. And that isn't to say that you could sue your boss for wrongful termination of employment, but I hope that you understand what I'm saying here. And like I said, turning your mind kind of goes hand in hand with radical acceptance, because the act of turning your mind is the act of noticing that you are experiencing negative emotions and negative thoughts. But instead of hyperfixating on those negative feelings, you can turn your mind and turn it into something positive and feel okay about it. You don't have to feel good about it, but you can accept it for what it is. And radical acceptance is one skill that I struggled with severely when I first started practicing my DBT skills. It is a very, very hard skill to master or to even practice at times, but it is so worth it. And it helps you to not blame yourself or blame others, but to just accept reality for how it is and accept the present as the present. The next skill that I would like to talk about is wise mind. And wise mind is also a very hard skill to, first of all, understand, but second of all, incorporate into your life. So there are two parts of wise mind. There is the emotional mind, and then there is the logical mind. And when you put those two things together, you are able to have wise mind. And I'll get to more of a description of wise mind after I get through describing what emotional mind and logical mind are. So emotion mind occurs when your thoughts are being controlled by your emotions. And this is actually from an article on DBT self-help. Emotion mind occurs when your thoughts are being controlled by your emotions. Logical thinking and planning are difficult, and facts may be distorted or made larger or more important. Thoughts and behaviors might be said to be hot, and the energy of the behavior tends to match the intensity of the feelings. So when you are thinking only emotionally based, you are likely feeling very intense emotions, and that might be the only thing that is flooding your mind right now, and you might not be able to see the logical side of things, so you might act on emotional impulse. But rational mind, or logical mind, is when you can think logically or be rational and reasonable about what is occurring. Analytical and empirical thinking are predominant in logical mind. So logical mind and emotional mind are completely separate from one another. But we can learn to use both of those thinking patterns and mesh them into one to get wise mind. And wise mind is the point of overlap between emotion and reasonable or logical mind. Wise mind is part reason and part emotion, and what makes you know you are in this mind is often a sense of intuition, and it can sometimes be described as an aha moment, where you finally understand because you're not using just emotional mind or just logical mind. And this same article actually gives some very, very, very good examples of how wise mind can feel very different between individuals. So this one states that wise mind is sometimes experienced in the center of the body, in the belly, or sometimes it's in the head or in between the eyes. So these are intuition points, when you get a gut feeling or when you have that third eye telling you. These are all intuition based. But once you become in tune with that intuition, and in tune with your body and the feelings that your body gives off to you, you can start to understand when wise mind is being used. Another example is that sometimes a person can find it by following their breath in and out. So when you're breathing in and breathing out and just focusing solely on that, sometimes that wise mind answer will just come straight to you. Another example that I like is, it is like the calm that follows the storm, something experienced immediately following a crisis or enormous chaos. So for example, last night for me, I was feeling enormous chaos. I was feeling massive emotion, and I acted just off of my emotional mind. But after I sat with it for quite a while, I was able to take a deep breath in and out. I was able to recognize at that moment that I could use those emotions that I had experienced, but I can also use the logic behind what had happened. And I can mesh those together and it can become one. And I can use that wise mind to understand that, yes, I messed up in some of the podcast, but I did not mess up by sharing my story. And for me, trying to understand wise mind was very difficult, so writing about it truly did help me. If I was in a crisis, I would write out the facts of the situation that was occurring, and then separately, I would write down the emotions that I was experiencing and the emotions that others were experiencing. And once you're able to look at both of those things, you're able to kind of combine those two mindsets and come up with one whole answer or one resolution or one thought process that is now coherent and that you can perceive as reality. And I know that that is a very hard one to understand, so I am going to include links below in the description that are going to explain better to you how to use radical acceptance and how to use wise mind and what both of them truly are. Second to last of the DBT skills that have helped me immensely is thought diffusion. And so I have pulled a small excerpt from the dialecticalbehavioral.com website, and this states that thought diffusion is a term borrowed from acceptance commitment therapy. The goal of thought diffusion is to create space between ourselves and our thoughts, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in our thoughts when we're feeling highly emotional. When we are overly reactive or attached to the negative thoughts that we have about our experiences, that often results in unproductive behavior and unnecessary suffering. So say you were to go through a crisis and you're experiencing all of these very, very negative thoughts over and over, and it's just making you feel 10 times worse about the situation. It's nice to be able to separate yourself from those thoughts and recognize that your thoughts are just your thoughts, and there's nothing more to it than that. So one exercise that really helped me to incorporate thought diffusion into my life was envisioning a river. And in this river are lily pads flowing by, and I am sitting on the bank of this river, and I close my eyes, and I visualize all of my thoughts are floating by on these lily pads. And as they go by, I'm able to recognize that those thoughts are there, but they don't have to stick, and they don't have to stay forever, because sometimes our thoughts can tell us things that are very untrue and very unproductive. And so it's best to just watch them float by and accept that they came and accept that they're leaving, and it feels great. There are quite a few other examples of this, such as watching clouds go across the sky, or having them come up. Your thoughts come up as flashes, and then they go back and come up as flashes and go back. And in the beginning, it can feel overwhelming, and it can feel like there's just too much going by and too much flashing at you. But eventually you learn to accept, and you learn to understand that your thoughts are your thoughts, and that they do not have to control the way that you perceive life around you. Because let's be real, we all have negative thoughts at times, and it's very hard to control that. And the last of the DBT skills that have helped me immensely, and this is one that has helped me in ways that I can't even verbally describe, is riding the wave. So our thoughts can be easily comparable to a wave. Our thoughts are going to come on, and they're going to reach a peak, a pivotal point, and then they're going to fall. So the act of riding the wave as a DBT skill is, say you're going through a crisis, and you feel as though you should react a certain way. Instead of reacting right away, it's best to feel out that emotion, let it rise, let it fall, and then react. So say I were to get into a big argument with a family member, and my first instinct is to text them back and get very angry and say horrible things to them because I'm feeling so emotionally overwhelmed and so hurt. Instead of doing that right away, you can envision that wave and envision that process. And the beginning of that impulse is the beginning of the wave starting to form. When that negative emotion or that negative impulse hits, you can feel as it starts to rise and rise and rise, and eventually it will reach a plateau. And once it reaches that plateau, it will start to dwindle, and that impulse or that negative emotion will become less and less and less. And then after that impulse or that emotion clears, you're able to think more clearly, and you might be able to use wise mind if you practice it and if you are cognizant of being able to use that. And that has helped me a lot to not make the mistakes that I could have made or not act on impulses that I could have acted on, and to think logically. And oftentimes that negative emotion felt like it was all-consuming. It was everything. It was a part of me, and I would use negative coping mechanisms, and it's almost like my brain had created these neural pathways into just immediately jumping to those things. But with practice and with mindfulness and recognition, you can actually just change those things. You don't have to go along with those thoughts or those impulses or believe those emotions. And I've practiced all of these skills so many times, and I've utilized them every single day of my life, and they have only helped to promote positive behavior and positive thought processes. And this is what makes me truly believe in the fact that our thoughts do create our reality in a way. And with that, I can't help but wonder how quickly we can create these neural pathways and how quickly we can change our mindset. So until next episode, episode 3, which is going to be on trauma and the way that it affects us later on in life, I am going to follow a very strict routine, practicing positive affirmations and seeing if these things that I absolutely despise doing now will eventually become a habit and become easier for me to do. And I hopefully don't even have to think about it after a certain point. So I'm actually going to pull up this document that I have created on Word, and it's titled Daily Wellness Routine, and I think that that's what the layout was just called as soon as I had pulled it up. But it has a pretty broad schedule, so I want to wake up around 7:30 a.m., and I want to meditate for 10 minutes. Then I want to stretch for 10 minutes, and then I want to journal and set affirmations and goals for my day. And those are all things that I really, really struggle with doing, and I want that to become a habit, and I want to continue to do those every day and not have it feel like it's the end of the world for me sometimes. And at 8 a.m., I want to make a healthy breakfast with healthy fats and vitamins and minerals minerals, and then chug some water. I've been really bad about taking my vitamins in the morning, and I know that this is going to help me do that. And then at 9 a.m., I want to be able to work on the podcast, and I have all the way from 9 to 12 to either work on the podcast itself or run errands if I need to. And then at 1 p.m., a healthy lunch. I want to eat intuitively. That goes for all of my meals throughout the day. 3 p.m., learn. Learning is one thing that I absolutely love, and it's hard to find time to be able to do that for myself and to challenge my brain. And I can read, I can research, write, or do something to strengthen my brain. And then I also want to meditate for 10 minutes after I have learned and trained my brain. And I want to journal afterwards and journal my experience throughout my day, just so that we have a reference for where this is going and how far we've come. And at 6 p.m., I'll have a healthy dinner. I'll have lean protein and at least one serving of veggies. I usually have more. I love veggies. And then at 9 p.m., it will be time for me to wind down. I will stretch for 10 minutes before bed. I will meditate for 10 minutes, journal afterwards, and then I will go through my goals that I'd set for my day, and then I will set more positive affirmations, give myself kudos for getting through the day and doing the things that I wanted to do. Oh, and I just realized that I didn't add in at 12 p.m. I will do at least 20 minutes of exercise, whether that is going to the gym, going for a run, or doing some intense yoga. I will be practicing these every single day, trying to keep up with the time frame and the routine. And of course, I'm going to give myself grace. Say I'm having a really rough day or I'm not feeling good. I'm not going to push myself to do like 20 minutes of HIIT training or anything like that. But I will do my best to keep up with absolutely everything else. And hopefully we will be able to see how long it really takes in order for these new neural pathways to become integrated as a part of me. And I'm sure that it'll take a lot longer than just a couple of weeks between episodes. But I have high hopes for this, and I'm hoping that I continue to do this after the 2 weeks is up. And I will be back next episode to let you know my results and let you know how it went. I will be completely honest with you. I'm not going to try and act as though I did better than I had thought or that I was doing better than I had expected it. I will be totally honest. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching or listening, and I am so excited to be continuing this journey with all of you. If you're listening on Spotify, you can find me at the Higher Mind podcast on YouTube, and you can watch my video. Or if you are watching on YouTube, you can go over to my Spotify at the Higher Mind podcast. I'll leave links in the description below for both of those things, as well as for my website, where you can also find those links. And you can also become a member on my website, where you will receive early access to my content, exclusive content, and you will gain entry into an awesome discussion where there are 14 different topics currently for you to talk about. These topics range from extraterrestrial life to book recommendations, all the way to mental health. A huge thank you to everybody who has supported me throughout this process, and also to the people who are viewing this. Hopefully you were able to gain some insight on mindset today, and until next time, thank you.